We're going to use the sine law now to solve triangles. So just like we did in the last unit where we had to solve triangles, we can use the sine law to also do that. Okay, so in this particular situation, it says in triangle CAT or CAT. Okay, it tells us that we have these particular pieces. So let's just quickly draw a triangle. And again, it doesn't have to be accurate, or specifically, it's not going to be to scale. And that's perfectly fine. If it's not to scale, then that is okay. So let's label this particular triangle. We'll call it triangle CAT. Okay. And the piece of information that we have from this triangle, because again we can label the opposite side, so C, A, and lowercase t. Okay, so we don't know the lengths of them quite at the moment. Okay, and again we can name those triangles or that triangle this way because again we've got our angles and the side length that's opposite the angle is the same letter but lowercase. So here it says that angle C is 32 degrees. So let's call this 32 degrees. Okay. It tells us that angle T is 81 degrees. So angle T is 81 degrees. And the length of side C is 24.1 centimeters. Okay, we're going to use that information to solve the triangle. So we got to figure out all the unknown sides, and we need to figure out all of the unknown angles. So there's a couple of things that we can do to solve this. First things, we want to know that we can use the sine law. Okay, and we can use the sine law because we have a complete angle side length pairing. Okay, we have a complete angle side length pairing right here. We have angle C and we have the length of side C. So that is key for us right off the bat. We also know two of the three angles of this triangle. We know angle C and we know angle T. We don't know angle A. So the first thing we should do is actually solve for angle A. So solving for angle A, we know we've got two of the three angles inside, and we know that 180 degrees minus the two known angles, so minus the 32 degrees minus the 81 degrees is going to give us angle A. So angle A is actually going to equal, let's see here, so 180 minus 32 minus 81 is going to equal 67 degrees. Okay, so angle A here is actually 67 degrees. Okay, so we've solved part of this already. The next thing that we want to do is continue to solve. And so we know the length of side A, but we don't, for example, know the length we know the length of side C, but we do not know the length of side T or side C. So let's quickly go through and let's solve for the length of side T. Okay, so side T is going to equal something. We don't know what that's going to equal, but we can use the sine law. Okay, and we know that the sine law, because we have a complete angle pairing here for C, okay, so we know that C over sine C is going to be equal to T over sine T. Okay, and so because we know that that part of the proportionality statement is true, we can put that in. It's also true, also obviously, that A is equal to sine of A, but right now we're not interested in sine A, and sine A is incomplete because we don't know what the value of sine A is. So we're not actually going to make use of this part of the sine law for this triangle. We're going to substitute in the values that we do know. We know that the value of C is 24.1. We know that the angle for C is 32 degrees, so we can put in sine 32. We don't know the length of t, so we'll just leave that as t. And we do, however, know the angle for t, which is 81 degrees. Okay, and now it's just a straight proportionality statement. So we're going to solve for the unknown value. In this case, we don't know what t is, so we're going to cross multiply. Okay, cross multiplying is going to be our friend for the course of this unit. Oh dear. So when I cross multiply, it's going to give me t times sine 32 is equal to 24.1 times sine 81. Okay. Now I want to get that t value on the left-hand side of the equal sign all by itself. So right now it's being multiplied by sine 32. And so what I need to do is I need to get rid of that sine 32. So I'm going to actually divide both sides by sine 32 because the opposite of multiplying by sine 32 is dividing by sine 32. And so what ends up happening is on the left-hand side of the equal sign, sine 32 up at the top in the numerator is canceled out by sine 32 in the denominator. So I'm just left with t on the left-hand side. And then if I go through and I solve the right-hand side of this equation, I take 24.1 times sine of 81, all divided by sine 32. Okay, and that's going to equal approximately 45 centimeters, 45 units. Okay, so we now know that the value of t is 45 centimeters. And that means that the only thing that we're still missing is actually the length of A. Okay, so now we need to figure out the value of A. We didn't know what that was before, but now we can. Okay, and so in order to figure out the value of A, we're going to use the same strategy. Okay, so let's quickly, we'll divide this screen a little bit more. Okay, so now we want to figure out the value of side length A. Okay, and again, we're going to go through and we're going to solve. So I'm going to take the key that I was given, and the key that I was given happens to be the C piece. So C over sine C is equal to A over sine A. I could put in T, okay, but I know for a fact, 100%, that my C ratio is complete and it is accurate. So I'm going to choose to use C. I could use T over sine T as my new key, but I don't need to, so I only need to work with two of them, so I'm going to work with the two that I've already got here. So I know that C is equal to 24.1. I've got sine C, which is equal to C, the angle C is 32. I don't know what my A value is, but I know from my earlier solution that the value of angle A is 67 degrees. So I'm going to substitute that in here. So 67 degrees is what I'm going to put in. And then, just like I did over here on the left-hand side, I'm going to use my cross-multiplying technique. Okay, so as I cross-multiply, I'm going to end up with 24.1 times sine of 67 degrees is equal to A times sine of 32 degrees. Okay, so these two things are equal. So this line right here is equal to the line above. Okay, those two lines are the same. So it's perfectly fine to carry on writing this. So now what I want to do is I want to get that A value all by itself. Right now that A value is being multiplied by sine 32. Okay, the opposite of multiplying by sine 32 is dividing by sine 32. So I want to divide both the left and the right side by sine 32, because what you do to one side of the equation, or the equal sign, you have to do to the other. So I'm just left with a. The reason I'm left with a is because sine 32 divided by sine 32 is 1, right? And 1 times a is still a. So now I want to figure out and solve for the left-hand side of the equation. So I'm going to do 24.1 times sine 67, all divided by sine 32. Okay, and that's going to equal approximately 41.9. Okay, so what that means is that the a value, or the length of side A, is approximately 41.9 centimeters. Okay, so what I've done now is I have solved all six parts of this triangle. So I know the length of side C, side A, side T, and I also know the angles for C, A, and T. And that, once I know all the lengths and all the angles of that triangle, that means that you have solved it completely.